All right, guys, if you follow the channel, you may know that we've got a new project in the shop, my personal project, my 93 Ford Bronco. And I want to take a little time and walk around the truck, give you guys a real inside look at its current condition, some of the things that need to be addressed, how exactly I'm going to tackle the project, and just an up close and personal look. So, I mean, here she is. Obviously, it is not perfect in any way, shape, or form, but as hard as these things are to find these days, this is actually a really good complete example. And when I say complete, I mean it's completely unmolested. It hasn't been lifted, it hasn't been modified, it hasn't been off-roaded and four-wheeled. It's in actually really good original condition. Now, one of the main things that combat any old vehicle is going to be rust, and Broncos are very prone to rust. Let's take Exhibit A, which is both rear wheel wells. Now, these are known to rust on the outside and the inner wheel well as well. Luckily, we actually offer all the sheet metal and patch panels needed to repair all of this rust, and this is one of the main big projects that I'm going to be tackling, is going to be repairing all the rust on this truck. Once that's done, we can tackle the very much so needed new paint job that it's going to need. This paint is faded, clear coat's gone, it's pretty much shot. There's really nothing left of it. Walking around to the front of the truck, you guys are gonna notice these crazy diesel running boards. Full diamond plate running boards. All of our guys over at Weston, you guys probably remember these very, very well from the early to mid 90s. These things were so popular. And as you can tell, they hold up incredibly well. These are really, really old. Not my personal choice of style, so they're probably gonna go. We'll maybe replace it with something a little bit more modern, but definitely a testament to the style of the early 90s. Let's go ahead and go around to the front of the truck, and I'll open the hood, show you guys what's under there. All right, this, my friends, is one of the options of of 1993 for engine options in the Bronco. This is the 302 V8, the 5-liter, incredibly reliable engine. They used these in the Mustangs and all other full-size trucks at the time, and they are, once again, really reliable, great running engines. The engine actually runs fantastic on this thing, which is great. And once again, really has not been messed with. It's still got the air conditioning intact, all the vacuum lines and everything intact, all the emission stuff is intact. This has not been messed with at all. At this point in time, with the brief glance that I've taken over the engine bay, I would just go as far as doing a good tune-up. You know, plugs, wires, cap and rotor and distributor, oil change and fluids. It's really a great, great, great running engine. So that's a good start because this needs a lot of attention in other areas. One of the big problems, if you'll notice, if you back up a little bit, truck's got just a little bit of a lean to the driver's side, and that's not normal. One of the main problems that these things have is the shock tower in the front tends to completely rot out, and the coil spring will actually go up through the top of that tower, and that's exactly what's happened. We've got at least 1 or 2 coils that's protruding up through the top of that, and that needs to be addressed immediately to make sure that this thing is safe to drive. It is not safe whatsoever right now, so truck's not going far until we address that. But let's move on to the interior. One of the cool parts about these old trucks, I have to admit, some of the most comfortable seats. I mean, that right there is a proper captain's chair. It's plush, it's super comfortable, armrests, massive center console. These things got a ton of space. These seats really aren't terrible. This one's torn a little bit on the side. That can be repaired, or we can just recover the seats completely. But in all honesty, I may just really just recover these things, not recover, just really just clean them up because they're in decent shape. The interior as a whole is in really good shape. I've actually already got new carpet from the previous owner that we're going to be installing to freshen things up. It needs a really good deep clean. And the other item that needs to be addressed is the headliner. If you get in there and look up, You can see just from over the years, people loading and unloading things that scrape the ceiling have kind of torn and ripped the headliner. That's another DIY that I'll end up showing you guys how to repair yourself. That's pretty easy to do. And of course we have more prone rust spots. You can see this is completely eaten away in the front fender here, but once again, they do offer patch panels or complete fenders to take care of that rust. All right, the next thing I want to do is get this thing up on the lift for the very first time and get a really close look at it, because we need to start prioritizing each job on the truck and also finding out what we need. We need to build a parts list, right? So let's go ahead and do that now. Told you it runs good. I'm coming that way. Right here. Shout out to our guys over at DZ. These diamond plate running boards hold up well. All right, guys, she's up in the air. Let's take a look. Like I said, the frame looks really solid. Front core support's rotting out pretty good, actually. But that is something that's available. So that does involve taking the whole front clip of the truck off. But this core support where the radiator and everything sits, and the headlights and so on, it's available. So that's okay. Frame still looks solid and needs to be treated to prevent any further rust. Here's one of the cool things about this truck though. Look, I mean, this oil pan is starting to flake a little bit in terms of the paint. I mean, I probably should remove this, repaint it, and make sure that it doesn't rust and corrode and rust through, but this thing doesn't leak a drop of oil, which is fantastic. Really minimal leaks in the front end at all with this truck, which is super, super good. Wow, this backing plate is shot. We'll take the front tires off in a little bit and lower it down, but I just want to take an overall look underneath. Okay. Looks like we're gonna need some trailing arm bushings in the front end. Let's check out this bushing back here. This is blown out. This stabilizes the front axle, and that bushing is shot. Same thing with the one right behind you. Not only is the bushing shot on this one, but if you look over here, the bracket that actually bolts the trailing arm to the frame is actually starting to rust completely, and that's gonna ruin the structural integrity. So this has to get replaced along with both coil spring towers on either side. Luckily, these are also readily available. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but the previous owner actually replaced all the brake lines on this truck, and they did a phenomenal job. They may have gotten pre-bent lines, which is fine, but the way they did the installation is incredibly clean. All right, we got a little bit of a leak from the transmission pan. Not a big deal. Skid plate for the transfer case looks pretty good. Could use a fresh coat of paint. Fuel filter doesn't even look that old. One thing I do want to look at as well before I forget is let's take a look at the floor pans for the tub. And guys, even though it's got the wheel well rust, look how solid these floors are. No issues at all. I mean, a little bit right there, but that's really not much. Let's check the other side. Still looks great. Passenger side, starting to get a little soft, but really not bad at all. Still really solid. I've seen much worse where, you know, floor pans are like Swiss cheese. We lost a lot of body grounds over the years. This part of the frame is starting to chip a little bit, but it's okay. It can all be dealt with. I think one of the tasks that I'm going to have with this truck is going through and replacing these body mounts and hardware. Like you can see, this is just obliterated. It's totally blown out. And that coil spring is just like, yeah. All right, top priority on the list. She's not ready to go just yet. We'll need trailing arm brackets that go to the frame on either side. Coil spring and shock towers on either side and front. I mean, it really could use ball joints and everything else too, just because they're old, but they're not loose. All right, guys, that's the inside look of my 93 Ford Bronco project, and the first order of business is to be getting this front end safe and straightened out, and that means replacing the shock towers on either side of the frame, as well as those trailing arm brackets bolted to the frame, because those are rusted so bad that this thing really isn't safe to drive. So it's staying right here in the shop until we get those parts ordered and get those installed, and you're gonna see that in an upcoming video. So if you haven't yet, make sure subscribe to the channel, stay up to date on all of the progress of my 93 Bronco.